BPod Studios.
Marchand back of it. Shoots, he scores!
This is
Brad Marchand.
Every Bruins game on 98.5, the Sports Hub.
We're back with Toucher and Hardy on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Hi, we are the Toucher and Hardy Show, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Bert Breer is here.
I love that Bert Breer is here.
He is, and it rhymes, which is fun. He's the senior NFL reporter and lead content strategist for the MMQB. Bert is brought to you by Bentley University. A force for business, a force for good, and Bert joins us live in studio this morning. Bert, Albert, however you want to be called, how was Vegas? How was the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
It was fine. I mean, I think it should be in the rotation now.
But you seem to have problems with it.
I had problems in the middle of the week, and it's not for a place where everything's so close together. It's not the easiest place to get around. The traffic was really bad, but there is the factor that there's a lot of event space there. There's a lot to do. And I think once you got to the weekend, you could see how, Wednesday, Thursday, everything was a pain in the ass, right? And that's when I made the comment. You guys know I'm not above anger tweeting. And, that was I have been stuck at a red light for 45 minutes.
You missed the media availability that sent you into orbit. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was no, it wasn't that. It was I was on a shuttle bus. And it legitimately took us 45 minutes to take two left-hand turns. And I'm sure for some stupid insurance reason they couldn't just let us off the bus. I think anybody on that bus would have much rather just let us off here and, whatever. That's I think in the category of lawyers. Lawyers ruin everything. Something happened on the line where.
I think enough people have been to Vegas to where it would be interesting to find out where you were going from where to where.
Yeah, I think it was everything was at the Mandalay Bay.
Okay.
Right? A lot of the media stuff was at the Mandalay Bay. I would have meetings down the strip and you pull out your phone and the app says you're a 10-minute walk away, but it takes you 45 minutes because you're out of one winding casino and into another. So there were logistical things.
You get
problems.
sidetracked by the reel-em-in slot machine.
But that's stupid media stuff. You know what I mean? So people don't care about that.
Okay.
But I think once you get to the weekend,
where were you going? Where it took you the 45 minutes?
There was a lot of stuff, believe it or not, at Resorts World, which is on the other end of the strip, which took a while to get up there.
I've never even been.
I don't know what that is.
I think that's new. Now Fountain Blue, which is brand new. Yeah, there was some stuff up there, and so it's just a little bit more. If you have to get to a cab for anything, it was hard.
Yeah.
And there was stuff that was just that far away, 2 miles away, 3 miles away, where it was just far enough away where
not warm.
And the cab was going to take you. That was also surprising me, but the cab was going to take you 30, 40 minutes to go 3 miles.
Yeah.
So there's little stuff like that, but I think overall, it's better than a lot of other places. That's for sure. Anybody who's saying it's as good as New Orleans, I don't believe has been to a New Orleans Super Bowl. So I still think New Orleans is by far the best city for it. But, Los Angeles has problems. Miami has problems. Phoenix has problems. All of these cities have their issues. The one that I think really probably has the least issues is New Orleans because everything is so central. And it is even more so than probably Vegas, able to just absorb people for some reason. I don't know why that is, but New Orleans never feels overwhelmed by any event.
What's the worst
one? The traffic at least made it feel like Minneapolis was bad. You guys were there.
I didn't think it was that bad.
Really?
I thought Phoenix was worse.
Really? Phoenix is really spread out.
I hate it.
Yeah, Phoenix is really spread out.
Minneapolis was just,
but LA,
it was
LA
ridiculous. You're at a Holiday Inn Express that was 15 minutes
by the
from
Mall.
the Mall of America.
And it was also one of those where it was just long enough so you couldn't walk. right?
Oh no, there was no walk.
We tried it once.
It was
big mistake.
It was.
I mean,
9 below.
if it was 70, you could walk.
Yes, but it wasn't 70. It wasn't 70 at
No,
all.
we were not
frostbite
close.
walking.
We got midway from the hotel to the Mall of America, and I was like, boy, what a
I
gigantic
think the high
mistake
for
this
that
was.
week was like 9.
Yes. Wind chill when we landed was 25.
I don't know.
Like,
I
you
thought
know
it
what
was a cool city.
You know what was a surprisingly good one? Was Indianapolis.
Indianapolis was the
Yes.
best one.
Very surprising.
I mean, Indianapolis, like, just because the amount of convention space, the amount of hotel rooms, like how central everything is, and they got super lucky with the weather, too.
You didn't need a car.
Yeah.
So that's no. We
for
didn't.
those
need
of
a
us
car.
who stayed outside the city, yes.
Oh, that's right. They put you in the. They didn't treat you very well.
No, they put us way out.
Yeah, but I mean, I did stay in like a Red Roof Inn, so I mean, I was living the
You
life.
had a TGI Fridays attached to that. You
Yeah,
were
I
fine.
know. So I was living the lifestyle, but no, but
No, when
that,
I go to Indy, like I'll be the Indy next week for the combine, or in 2 weeks for the combine. I won't ever rent a car when I go to Indy.
yeah, that's ideal. You
Yeah.
can do that in Detroit too. Is that you don't have to rent a car?
See, I
in
wasn't
Detroit.
at the Detroit Super Bowl, but I heard that was pretty well run too.
Yeah, you don't need a car in Detroit.
Yeah.
But I guess Dallas was pretty bad.
See, Dallas.
The weather had something to do with that,
Yeah,
too.
Dallas got screwed by the weather.
Yeah.
Like Dallas, like I sort of feel bad because I lived there and I think it could be a good Super Bowl city. It's just like I got so unlucky with the weather where it was like very, very rare that would happen. And they're so unequipped for snow down there. You know, like it snowed, like it may snow like once a year tops. So they don't have anywhere near the infrastructure. And then like they've got an ice storm there. They don't know how to freaking like sand and salt the roads, you know, like
Right, but they should have had contingency plans because they were having the Super Bowl. What about how was New York City when it was there?
it like almost like was nice, like nothing was happening.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
like-
kind of cool.
Like you go to like certain parts of Manhattan, and it was like
It was like
who
cares?
there's no
Yeah.
Super Bowl there.
Well, that's interesting. All right, so you would say that you think that it should be part of the rotation?
Yeah, I mean, I
because
think
San Francisco's going to suck.
San Francisco's the thing about San Francisco is the city is the city's so far from the stadium.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
The stadium's almost like a different part of California.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so and I when I was covering that one, that was when I was still at NFL Network, and I was actually covering the Panthers that week. So I was staying in San Jose, which I don't know how much you guys know about San Jose.
Oh,
San Jose is like the most like just soulless, like it's the city it's like the 9 to 5 city. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like 5 p.m. like it died. Like
Right.
people are in the city.
Hartford, Connecticut. It
Right,
sounds like.
that's what
Jesus.
that's actually not a bad comparison.
Jesus.
That's exactly what it feels like. It's not that there's nothing there. It's that the entire place like
Empties
completely
out.
shuts down
Oh,
at 5
boy.
o'clock.
Yeah, so it's like Jacksonville. It's along those lines. Jacksonville was a terrible place, and I can't imagine the Super Bowl. It was hard to go to a Jets game there, let alone a Super Bowl. I can only imagine how bad the Jacksonville Super Bowl
Apparently Jacksonville, and I've been there a few times. Like apparently Jacksonville's beaches are really cool, but they're like 45 minutes from actual Jacksonville, right?
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I heard that the beaches in Maui are really good, but they're only an 18-hour flight away from Boston. All right, Bert's here. We had on Dane Brugler, who had his big.
Yeah, Dan does a good job.
Yeah,
The Beast, right?
Yeah, but that hasn't come out yet. He had his top 100 rankings, regardless of position, regardless. It wasn't a mock draft, and he had some interesting takes on positions as a whole. I would like to get your thoughts on those. Also on the, I haven't heard you talk about this yet, but I have yet to hear a draft guy suggest the Patriots do not take a quarterback with the third pick in the draft.
I could suggest that for you if you want.
Oh,
Interesting.
my goodness, Bert. Albert, how dare you?
I have a nuanced take on this. one.
Counterculture phenom. Check him out.
I mean, you know what? He's pushing against the grain.
Yeah.
If he thinks he's better than Brugler, he's got another thing coming.
I know.
But I mean, we'll try to put him in. We'll put him in the ring and see who comes out alive. All
The
right.
octagon.
We'll put him in the octagon. Get in the ring, mother effer. Bob Guccione Jr., you're just upset your dad gets laid more than you. You like that Get in the Ring? That needed to be on that album.
Yeah.
That needed to be on Use Your Illusion.
Is that one or two?
Well, there should have only been one.
There should have
agree
only
with
been
that.
one. And The addition of Shannon Hoon singing backup vocals on it actually helped save a couple of those songs, and I'm not kidding.
And well, Shannon Hoon was one of the great disgraces of our lifetimes. All right, we'll be back in just a moment. He sucks.
BackstageCountry.com, your online home for all things country music. Award-winning movies often have incredible soundtracks, and many of those have gone on to become country gold. We've picked our top 5 country songs that have been nominated for an Oscar. Text Oscar to 45911 to see if your favorite made the list on BackstageCountry.com. Text Oscar to 45911 and we'll send the link straight to your phone.
It's the all-new way for you to wake up. Toucher and Hardy on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Toucher and Hardy. Bert Breer works for the MMQB. The draft is coming, and this is the way that things are going to be here for a while. Free agency, the draft. These are the exciting times, especially the draft. The Patriots have the 3rd pick in the draft. We talked to Dane Brugler yesterday, who has his draft big board, top 100 players ranked regardless of position. This is not a mock draft. He has Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU, Drake May, the QB, of course, out of North Carolina. Then he's got Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia, Joe Alt, tackle out of Notre Dame, another receiver, the kid out of Washington, and then Jaden Daniels at 8, and then another offensive tackle, the kid out of Penn State. His belief was that there's three star quarterbacks at the top of this draft, that it falls off after that.
Yep.
He believes that the difference between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors is not much. He thinks that they're both tremendous talents.
And I've talked to people who think actually like Rome Odunze is close to Marvin. So like I think Marvin will be the first receiver to go. But I think Marvin might be the best receiver prospect since Julio Jones and A.J. Green. The fact that there are 2 other guys that are close to him tells you about the strength of the class.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to ever get worse. I mean, every receiver class seems to be great.
And look, you know what that is? That is a result of where the sport is going. It's 7-on-7. Yeah. I think maybe the most interesting thing about it, if you look at it, have you guys noticed how many corners, like the great corners coming into the league, are the sons of ex-players? Mm-hmm. So Patrick Surtain, Asante Samuel, J.C. Horn is Joe Horn's kid, right? Like, so there are all these guys that are great corners coming into the league that are the sons of players. You know, Stingley is Daryl Stingley's grandson.
Okay,
yes. Derek Stingley for the Texans, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the reason for that is because a lot of these dads who played in the league are looking at their kids and saying, there are 100 kids like you playing receiver in America. There are maybe 5 that are playing corner. Play corner.
And look, you've got good hands, but you don't even need good hands. You just need to have receiver skills. But don't worry about catching it.
Look at Patrick Surtain Jr. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's built like a receiver. He's playing corner. Why?
But he can't catch.
Fred, to your point, like this is what this is. This is where the sport is going. And it's not that they can't. No, honestly, like it's the smart move to play corner, right? Like there are so far fewer of them, and like it's just if you look at it like just analytically, like do you want your kid thrown into a pool of 100 kids like him? Or into a pool of 10 kids like him.
And conceivably, you can do a little switching around without too much trouble, whether it is to safety or and every team wants like minimum of 3 like high caliber guys in the secondary. Whereas for the receivers, I think most teams are happy with like 2 high caliber.
Yeah.
So I think there's more jobs for guys like that.
And that's why you can get really good receivers. Puka Nacua in the 5th round. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round, right? Like, there's depth, too. Like, a lot of the best athletes across the country now are playing receiver. And it's because of 7-on-7. It's because of the way the game is going. There are a lot of guys where you look at them build-wise, like Deebo Samuel probably would have been a running back 30 years ago. Odell Beckham probably would have been a running back 30 years ago. Wow. Like now Marvin wouldn't have been. Marvin's built like a receiver. Malik Neighbors, like you look at his build, he probably would have been a running back 30 years ago.
Yeah. So was he 6
it's
foot
just
even?
It's just the natural. Yeah. It's the natural progression of like the way so running backs aren't getting paid. They don't last very long. I want my kid playing receiver. Everybody's throwing the ball all over the yard. Kids are playing 7-on-7 growing up. So anyway, Fred, like that's like why this is happening. Okay. And like that's why it's become easier and easier to find really good ones because it's naturally where the sport has gone. It's where the high school game is going. It's where the college game is going. Right. That's what's coming into the pros.
All right, so we've established that there's elite receiver talent and you can get good receivers all over the draft. His point was that there's 3 star quarterbacks in this draft. May, Williams, and Daniels, and then there's a drop-off. Unless J.J. McCarthy does something, which some people say
all right, so like I the way I'd break this down to people is like I think going into the draft cycle, which like let's call it New Year's Day, you had the first cluster of quarterbacks, which is the 3 guys you're talking about, right? Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. And then the second cluster, which is J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. I think that's the way a lot of teams looked at it. And Nix and Penix went to the Senior Bowl, and they did not look very good. So ostensibly then the gap between the top 3 and the next 3 has grown. JJ hasn't entered into the process really yet. He didn't play in the Senior Bowl, so we'll see him at the Combine.
With the other 2,
does he look great? Does he look great spinning it at the Combine? Does he look great? Does he run a 4.4?
Well, that's what they're saying, Bert. Is I guess that they're saying that obviously he didn't get to throw the ball a ton at Michigan.
Yeah.
They're saying that his physical traits are like out of this world. That when he goes. Well, the problem when he works out for teams, that it's like it's going to be a show.
Yeah, and I think that part of it's going to be really interesting because I think most of the scouts that I've talked to that have gotten up on him, and like actually stood next to him, like, man, he's not very big.
Oh, really?
Like, and he's narrow, and I had one scout who, did school calls at Michigan who said he's sort of built like a stretched out Bryce Young, and he's not even that tall. Oh, so he's like 6'2", maybe, and like maybe 200. Like I think he played at like about 202. Which, I mean, for an NFL quarterback isn't very big, and it's something you have to consider, right?
Sure.
It's a question with Jaden Daniels, too. I mean, Jaden Daniels, I believe, is like 200, 205. Like he's 6'4".
Well, I've heard that's his biggest question.
And he's skinny. He's skinny.
Yeah, is that I mean, there's some people that are saying, well, you're going to have to get a good backup because he will get hurt.
Because of the way he runs.
And right? Also his build.
And the problem, and the one thing that you can say with JJ is JJ just turned 21, so maybe he'll fill out or whatever. Jaden Daniels turns 24 in December.
Right.
So, like, there's probably a little bit more of what you see is what you get with him.
Right.
These are, like, questions that I think these teams are going to have to answer. Like, I got around Drake May a little bit at the Super Bowl. He looks like a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, the way he's built, like, he, like, looks like a franchise quarterback. Caleb Williams is not overly tall, but he's built. Like he's stocky. So like these are all questions that you have to sort through.
Wait, but John, he had teased this going in. All right, so I told you that Brugler, his thing was, these 3 quarterbacks. You got to take a quarterback, but you disagree. What's your take on what
Yeah,
to do?
So I think so. I've used that art and science thing a few times the last few weeks. So I think the science to it says take a quarterback, right? Because you can't guarantee that you're going to be up that high, and the probability of getting it right, like in that part of the draft, is much higher than it is in another part of the draft. Blah 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 blah. The art of it, though, is you have to. The numbers tell us not all 3 of those guys are going to make it.
Right.
As much as we all think of them, as much as everybody all thinks of them now, the numbers say to us that all three of them aren't going to make it. So the art of the decision is identifying which one's the one. And I would just tell you, like, recent history tells us the teams that have gotten that guy have been not just, like, had the ability to get into that area of the draft, whether it was by trade or by being bad. It's also they identified the guy, right? The Chiefs, like, Mahomes was the second quarterback picked in that draft, the 10th pick overall, and the Chiefs moved up 17 spots to get him. They identified him. Buffalo, they identified Josh Allen. He was the third quarterback taken in that draft. They felt like he was the best one. They wind up moving up from, I believe it was somewhere in the middle of the first round. I think they went from like 21 to 12 to 7 to get him, right? So Buffalo identified him. The Ravens identified Lamar Jackson. They traded up and got him at the bottom of the first round. I think he was the 5th quarterback taken in his draft class, and he goes 32nd overall. You, of course, have Joe Burrow, which is like, okay, they're the worst team in the league, and it's the year that Joe Burrow's coming out. Jaguars, same thing. They're the worst team in the league. It's the year that Trevor Lawrence is coming out. But I think once you get past that first overall pick, what history tells us is the teams that have been able to get guys outside of the first pick are the ones that are really good at identifying him. So you have to be able to identify if either Jaden Daniels or Drake May is the guy. Chances are they both won't be, right? Like maybe one or the other will be.
Right.
And then you have to have the balls to, if that guy doesn't fall to you, if it's the other guy, like the right thing to do might be to trade out. Because there's nothing worse than getting it wrong. Because if you get it wrong at third overall, you've not only gotten that wrong, you've probably taken yourself out of the quarterback market for the next 3 years, and you're going to get everybody fired.
Okay, but all right, so I've heard guys say this. All right, saying you're going to get Mahomes, saying you're going to get someone like that, probably isn't going to happen. That's what you just said is true. However, at the top of the draft, if you do your homework, you should be able to get a guy with the potential to possibly be a top 10 quarterback, and that's what you need, because a top 10 quarterback can get you in the playoffs, and once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. So do you believe Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Daniels all have the potential to at some point be top 10 quarterbacks?
They all have the talent.
All right, because then I take them, right?
They have the physical ability, yes. Again, like, there's a lot more that goes into it than just that, you know? So
it's a good start, though.
It's a good start. Zach Wilson had the ability, though.
I know.
Well, that's just it. I think all these guys you can put in the conversation based on what they've done so far in college.
Yeah.
But Bert, to me, that's the scariest part. If you see your team, as the Patriots did when they drafted Mac Jones, just taking the guy that was left there, and not. Like I would never had any conviction that they identified him as the guy. I think they were willing to take anything. And San Francisco, they had essentially said the same thing. They're like, "Oh, we're happy with Trey Lance. We'd be happy with this. We'd be happy with that." That's where it gets dangerous. If you don't have the guy identified and you just take somebody.
No, they traded up for Trey Lance.
Yeah,
but
they wanted him.
They did, like,
specifically,
but I don't think that they. So they didn't trade up for him specifically, though.
Thank you.
They wound up getting themselves to the place where they preferred Trey Lance over Mac Jones. And I've heard all that crap that Kyle liked Mac over Trey. I could just tell you for a fact that's not true.
But that was part of the narrative.
Kyle did like Trey Lance more.
Jimmy Garoppolo was sitting there, and they said things like, "We'd be happy with any of these guys."
No, but they made the trade to get Trey
Lance.
Lance.
They made the trade. Like, here's the difference, though. Like, when they made that trade with the idea, we need to get a quarterback that we can build around for the next 10 years in here, and we like all of these guys. I just knowing the history of how these things went, right? I can just tell you that the Chiefs and Bills were different in that they identified those guys. Pat Mahomes, I'll give John Dorsey and Brett Veach and Andy Reid all the credit in the world. They said this guy is different. And John Dorsey and Brett Veach were working on Andy Reid for a year and a half, sending him tape. Hey, look at this, look at this, look at this with Mahomes. So those guys deserve a lot of credit because, like, not everybody saw it that way, right? And same thing with Buffalo and Josh Allen. Now, Buffalo whiffed the year before in like trading down because they were in the Mahomes spot, and Kansas City traded with them. But the Buffalo Bills, like I can again tell you for a fact, they thought Josh Allen was better than Baker Mayfield, was better than Sam Darnold. They thought he was the best player in that draft, right? And so in both those cases, it wasn't we need to go up and get a quarterback, right? It was no. We need to get that guy.
Right.
And I think that's what it has to be. Like I think you have to feel like that sort of conviction on it. And you might be right, you might be wrong, but like if you don't have that sort of conviction, that's where the Patriots got themselves in trouble. Because the Patriots, like again, like I'll take you inside that room and what happened in 2021, and I know there's been a lot of guessing and conjecture. I could tell you what happened in there. And what happened in there was, well, we think he's good. We don't think he's great. After what we just went through, we need to take a quarterback. And that's how they landed on Mac Jones. And, I mean, I can also tell you that, like, Davis Mills was a consideration in the second round. The idea of going and taking Davis Mills in the second round and a position player in the first round.
But that's different than this year. That's what if
but the mentality is the same.
No. But if you believe there's 3 quarterbacks that have the potential to be top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, you again for the reasons you stated before, you might not be up here again. I heard next year's draft class with quarterbacks is incredibly underwhelming. So that's another year you're not going to get a quarterback. If you get these guys on the cheap, if you believe you can develop one of these guys into a top 10 quarterback. Everyone knew the limitations of Mac Jones, and that's why he fell. Like if you're sitting at 3, maybe if you've got a huge conviction for a quarterback at 2, make the move up to 2. I mean,
well, that's what I'm hearing. There's a difference between saying all 3 of these guys can play. There's a difference between that and identifying the guy.
Right,
that's him.
There's a big
out
difference.
Of those 3 or 4. Nope, that's the one.
But you need a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and if you don't get him this year. There's a good chance you're not going to get them.
Here's the problem. The problem is there's a lot of risk too, in that, and I think that this is a nuance that people don't pay attention to. But if you take a quarterback in the second or the third or the fourth round, that doesn't preclude you from doing anything. If you take a quarterback third overall, you're probably not addressing the position for another 3 or 4 years. So you are legitimately, if you're Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf, whoever else, you are tethering your job security to the guy. Because if that guy doesn't work out, you're getting fired.
Heath Schuler and Gus Frerotte. What about
Joey Harrington?
What about RG3?
Brock Purdy.
RG3 and Kirk Cousins.
Brock Purdy is another one.
Okay.
So Brock Purdy makes up for Trey Lance. But Fred.
Game, set, match, Fred.
The idea of the idea that you're going to hit on a 5th or a 6th or a 7th round pick and have that be your long-term starter is a very
no. That's why I'm saying take one. Even more reason why I take one at the top. All right, let's talk about. We'll continue to talk to Bert, and we'll figure out what his take on is with everything going on with the Patriots and their coaching staff. People are all up in arms.
BackstageCountry.com, your online home for all things country music. Wondering who made our list of the top 5 all-time queens of country music? Did Carrie Underwood make the cut? Find out now when you text Queens to 45911 and scroll through the list on BackstageCountry.com. Text Queens to 45911 to see the talented artists who rounded out our top 5 list.
One has no idea he's awake.
And it's not much of a surprise.
The other is just realizing what it takes to get up at 4:30.
Do I need to be here?
It's Toucher and Hardy.
Shows you how together this whole operation is.
On 98.5 The Sports Hub.
All right. We are Toucher and Hardy. We are brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Bert Breer from the MMQB is in studio with us. And what do you make of the hires that the Take us into the organization. You pretty much called off the air. Now I can say that Bill O'Brien was going to go to BC. You seem to be on top of that whole thing. So what are you hearing about what's going on in the building with the Patriots, the Alex Van Pelts of the world, the Brian Belichick's of the world?
Yeah, I just think it's interesting how they have sort of stacked the coaching staff so there's more experience on the offensive side with Alex Van Pelt and Ben McAdoo backstopping him. And then on defense, it's a little bit more of like I would say developmental staff where you've got guys who are taking a step up, whether it's Dante Hightower stepping into coaching. I'd assume both, Brian Belichick and Mike Pellegrino are probably going to have a little bit more responsibility than they had before. And then, of course, you've got a coordinator who was the defensive line coach a year ago who's going to have to, into Marcus Covington, who's going to have to sort of learn the back end of the defense. And so do you still feel like you have to add somebody to kind of backstop that area? Like one guy they were really interested in was Christian Parker, who was the secondary coach in Denver last year and who wound up going to Philadelphia. And one reason they really liked him was he could help with the back end. So I don't know if the defensive staff is complete yet, but it's sort of, you look at the two sides of the ball and their handling of hires on the offensive side was skewing towards we need to get some experienced guys in here, where defensively there's less of that, which tells me that maybe Gerard's going to be involved on defense a little bit more than offense his first year.
Okay. What did you make of Alex Van Pelt? He talked about how his theory on offense is to take to mold it towards his players, that a lot of offensive coordinators just have a system and make the players fit his system.
Well, I think you saw that last year, right? Like in Cleveland. I mean, like how many different quarterbacks they went with.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think like that's the way it's going. And that's because what you see coming – I feel like I'm going back to like kind of like the root of all of this again, but a big part of it is these guys come out of such different systems in college now. Mm-hmm. And so you have different guys who are used to different things, and how can you fit it to them so when they come into the league, you're doing everything you can to shorten the learning curve. And so I think that that's definitely a piece of it, where you see what he was able to do with making the offense, trying to make an offense work for Deshaun Watson, having to do it for Jacoby Brissett the year before, handling an awkward situation there. Previous to that, they'd work with Baker Mayfield, and then over the course of this year, working with P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and then rebuilding the offense again for Joe Flacco when he came in at the end of the year. And I think the other thing is, like, you just like look at like what they were able to do with the group that they had last year on offense. I thought it was massively impressive, and that's why I kept saying, like, here, after he was hired, look at what they were winning with. They had their fourth and fifth tackles. They had Nick Chubb out for the year, in week 2.
Yeah.
They made it work under, like, some pretty messy circumstances. And so, like, I don't know that people here have a full understanding of exactly what was accomplished in Cleveland last year, which is why so many people within that organization were shocked when Van Pelt got fired.
I mean, in terms of the versatility and, like, putting together an offense that is specific to players. Okay, I understand. To me, that always makes sense, and even Belichick would mention that in the past. It's like, of course, you do it around your quarterback and what his capabilities are, but you have to find players, if they're not so talented in one area where it's obvious you have to play a certain way, they at least have to be versatile enough to be able to adapt to whatever system you're going to do. So if that is going to be your mindset, as Fred said, to have your style of offense, and we're not going to change for the players are going to do our style, you better make sure they're talented enough or versatile enough to be able to do different things, especially if it's stuff they haven't done before.
Yeah, and that's sort of the issue you have going into the off season, is that you have
that is the problem.
I mean, and
just the level of talent that you have.
I mean, I do Dude, just like listening to the station over the last couple of weeks, I think people think you're going to snap your fingers and fix it at once, and I think that's like ridiculous. Like, I just think it's like that shows a complete and utter misunderstanding of how deep the problem is, like from a talent standpoint, right? Like, you're probably not getting to 8 or 9 wins next year. I'd hate to break that to everybody, and I hate to ruin 2024 before it's even started, but you have your biggest holes on offense are at the 3 most expensive positions.
Like tackle, wide receiver, and quarterback?
Yeah. So whether you're spending high draft picks on it,
I think the first 3 draft picks they make are going to be tackle, wide receiver, and quarterback.
Or money, whether you're spending money on it or you're spending high draft picks on it, like, it's hard to fix 3 premium positions at once. In large part because when teams have good ones, they don't let them go. Right? So, like a couple examples of some guys that could be available this offseason, receiver-wise, right? So I think there's a chance that the Bengals wind up trading T. Higgins.
Oh, I thought they were going to franchise him.
They're going to franchise him, and I think there's a chance that they tag him and trade him.
Okay.
Because I think what's going to happen is they're going to get to a price point where T wants to be paid like a number 1 receiver, and the Bengals know in the backs of their heads, all right, whatever we give T. Higgins becomes the floor for Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is the superior player. So are you willing to give up, say, a 1 and a 3 and a big contract to get T. Higgins? Because that's what it would cost, right?
Boy,
okay. All right. So
no,
then not if you're
not going to win 8 games next year.
Then look at the Niners, right? Then look at the Niners. Okay, I think the Niners are going to wind up trading somebody because of their cap issue. So let's say it's either Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk. Are you willing to do the same thing for Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk? Look, that's what you're looking at. And those guys, we don't even know if those guys are bona fide number 1s, right? Like, Ayuk and Samuel are really good players. Samuel's a little bit more of a gadget guy. Ayuk, I think, has potential to be like a number 1 type, but he's never had to be that guy for San Francisco because they have Samuel and Kittle. And so... And obviously, like, Higgins hasn't had to be that guy in Cincinnati because they have Chase. So I just look at these things, and it's if you go and get like a number 1 receiver, if you try to go and get a veteran number 1 receiver, it's gonna be really hard to do it on the veteran market. So how else do you do it? You got to find him in the draft.
Wait, so T. Higgins would go for a 1 and a 3? You said?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so why would I possibly trade a 1 for a receiver when I could get an elite receiver in the first round?
Okay,
regardless?
but now you've spent your number 1 pick on a receiver. So now how do you handle your tackle issue and your quarterback issue?
No. But what I'm saying is that I give it up anyway for T. Higgins.
Well, you probably wouldn't give up the 3rd pick. You might give up next year's one.
No, I know, but I could get a receiver next year. There's going to be a big
right. But that's the thing is if you're talking about fixing it all at once, now it's okay, now we're going to have to wait till next year to handle this.
Well, you made a point
and that's
on
why
Twitter.
I'm saying this just takes a while.
Yeah. Well, no, I understand that. Believe me, and that's it if you do everything right.
Mm-hmm.
You made a point on Twitter that Kansas City has won the last 2 Super Bowls, and those are the 2 years after they traded Tyreek Hill. And
it got destroyed for that.
Well, I mean, welcome to Twitter.
Yep.
It's hard to get people to get down on you there. But your point was you got to build through the
lines
line.
of scrimmage. Yeah, and if you look at it, when I was on TV last night, they played some Jim Murray sound, and I love Jim, but he made the point, he got all upset over Alex Van Pelt saying he built through the running game. Look at the 4 teams that were alive at the end.
Okay,
3 of them have among the best running games in football.
Yeah,
right. Detroit, San Francisco, Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 3 teams that run the ball exceptionally well. And if you look at the build of the 4 teams that were alive at the end, when those coaches got there, what did they do? They built on the lines of scrimmage, right? So, I mean, look, I'm just, and I know people are roll their eyes at it.
You've said this before, but
it's true.
You can throw Philadelphia into that example too about building from the line.
Andy Reid's first draft pick in Kansas City was a tackle. Dan Campbell's first draft pick in Detroit was a tackle.
Well,
John Lynch's first draft pick in San Francisco was a defensive lineman. If you look at how the Niners built, their first 3 first-round picks, defensive line, their first 4 first-round picks, a defensive lineman, a linebacker that didn't work out, an offensive tackle, and a defensive lineman.
And as a quick aside, in Brugler's ranking of the players, the first lineman on there is at 6. It's Joe Alt. Mm-hmm. So is that a little low for the first offensive tackle to show up in the top 100 for a draft?
But there's a lot of good ones this year. I just think if you look at the sequencing of it, right? I'm not saying don't take Marvin Harrison because I think he's a great player. Again, I think he might be the best receiver prospect to come along since 2011. But there's a sequencing to the way you build these things. And generally with the really good teams, receiver doesn't come first. Receiver is something that happens down the line.
Yeah.
And, I look at Julio Jones, made a huge difference in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Those guys were in their 4th year there. Thomas Dimitroff and Mike Smith were in their 4th year there when they drafted Julio Jones, right? Find me a team that became a great team where the GM and the head coach came in new and the first thing they did was go get a receiver. It's not the first thing you do.
No.
The Ravens are another example where the core of that team is guys like Ronnie Stanley and Justin Matabuke and what did they do? Last year they went and drafted Zay Flowers and they signed Odell Beckham, but that was after that team is built out, right?
And we just got done having the conversation that kids are all playing receiver now, and
you can find them.
That you can find them all over the draft. And you just mentioned Deebo Samuel, who I know
was a second rounder.
And where was Ayuk taken?
Ayuk was a late first. Amon-Ra St. Brown is
was
the best
4th rounder.
Is a 4th rounder, right? Puka Nacua with the Rams. Puka Nacua is a 5th rounder, and who's he playing next? He's playing next to Cooper Kupp, who is a third rounder.
Yeah.
So, I love the receivers at the top. This is a great receiver draft, right? And I think between Neighbors and Adunze and, of course, Harrison, you got 3 real potential number 1s. I just think one of the reasons why you don't see receivers go in the top 5 that often, right? And more often you see them later in the first round is because most teams see it as getting a receiver, that's a finishing piece.
Teams that bad are not looking for a finishing
Well, look
piece.
at the Jets with Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is, by all accounts,
great,
capable of being a star, but what's he going to do? They just wasted 2 years of his career, and he can't do anything.
Right.
Yeah. He's had 2,000-yard years, but, the Jets aren't winning anything. All right. Well, listen, Bert Breer, it is always a pleasure, sir. I'm glad that you – you didn't see U2 at the Sphere, did you?
I did.
Okay.
Well, I will say this.
Did you post some video of it? Because I haven't seen any online and any
social media. Big mystery what's inside that building.
Yeah, honestly, what's it look like in there?
Yeah. Honestly, I will say this. I'm like you, Fred, this way, I think. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm like the guy who, when everybody says something is great and I go to it, I'm preparing myself to be disappointed.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not putting words in my mouth.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? I think you're like that too.
I am.
When everybody says, when everybody builds something up, I'm like, and I go to it, I'm like, I'm going to be completely disappointed. This is not going to be cool. It will. My thought coming out of that place was I can't believe human beings built this.
I don't doubt that the Sphere is super cool. But the problem is U2's playing it.
But Fred, you were the same way going into Hamilton, and when you came out, all you could do was talk about it.
I just wanted to rap. I never appreciated
the art form. But what
he
didn't see coming was he learned a little something too.
Hey,
there it is.
I learned that the Manuel fella is not
entertainment
too hard
and
on
education.
Not too hard on these eyes. All right, Bert. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
I got to go make water. I don't mean to be rude, so if you want to stay for when I come back, I won't wash my hands and we can shake. All right, we'll be right back.